For most of the 20th century, psychology, the study of human behavior, has focused on the question, what's wrong with people? In other words, traditional psychology has typically tried to understand mental illness or psychopathology and other dysfunctional patterns in human thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. However, at the turn of the century, a man called Martin Seligman started questioning this approach and began to explore human behavior from the opposite approach. In other words, what's right with people? What are their strengths and how do they thrive, especially in difficult circumstances? And so we began to hear words like resiliency popping up. Nowadays, we hear people fostering mental health instead of discussing mental illness. And this new branch of psychology is called positive psychology, and it studies topics such as gratitude or good relationships, compassion, sense of humor, positive thinking, and, believe it or not, positive psychology has started studying wisdom. Traditionally, wisdom has been associated to spirituality, so for psychology to include it as a part of what makes a person live well and thrive is pretty revolutionary. And so what is wisdom? According to Paul Baltes, a leading expert on the topic, wisdom is expert knowledge in the fundamental pragmatics of life that permits exceptional insight, judgment, and advice about complex and uncertain matters. Or in other words, you can tell a person is wise when they use sound judgment to navigate a complex situation. While this idea may be revolutionary in the 21st century, thousands of years ago, the psalmist wrote, "Teach us to number our days, that we may gain a heart of wisdom." It was believed that Moses wrote Psalm 90, and I'm sure we can all agree that the older he got, the wiser he seemed to be, especially when we see the way he dealt with those stubborn Israelites. He seemed to understand that our lives are so fleeting, and if we want to live a meaningful life, we need to be wise in the way that we use the time God has given us. Moses helps us put our lives in perspective and reminds us that being wise in the Lord in this short life means leaning on God for exceptional insight or judgment about complex matters. And that's wisdom for righteous living. I'd like to end with Psalm 111, verse 10, which says, "The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. All who follow his precepts have good understanding." And finally, if you want wisdom, but don't feel you have any, James 1, verse 5 gives us a tip on how to get it. If any of you lacks wisdom, you should ask God, who gives generously to all without finding fault, and it will be given to you. And that is our nugget for today. I'll see you tomorrow.